It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon. Manny Pacquiao, dressed simply in a white polo and jeans, walked into a small, family-run restaurant tucked away in the heart of Manila. No entourage, no cameras, just Manny and his humility. The aroma of grilled fish and fresh soup filled the air as he took a seat near the window. People whispered softly, recognizing the boxing legend, but Manny simply smiled and nodded, asking for the house special. A few minutes later, a young waitress approached his table, maybe in her early 20s, polite but nervous. Her name tag read Lena. Her voice trembled slightly as she took his order. Manny, always kind, noticed the way she avoided eye contact. Then he saw it. A faint bruise along her wrist, another just beneath her sleeve. He didn't react right away. He'd seen enough battles in the ring to recognize one outside it. Something about her manner, the forced smile, the quick retreat, told him this wasn't an accident. As she walked away, Manny's expression changed. His jaw tightened, his eyes softened with concern. He watched silently as Lena hurried to another table, flinching slightly when a man at the counter barked an order at her. A man who seemed far too comfortable giving commands. The restaurant carried on, unaware of the quiet storm forming in one corner. Manny took a sip of water, thinking. The world champion who'd fought for titles now sat in front of a different kind of fight, one that didn't need gloves, but courage. Then came the moment. Lena returned with his food, trying to hide the pain behind her professional smile. Manny looked up at her, gentle, respectful, and said softly, "Are you okay, miss?" She froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The man at the counter looked up sharply, his eyes narrowing. The air in the restaurant grew heavy. What Manny did next shocked everyone in that restaurant, and changed one woman's life forever. Sometimes the bravest fight happens outside the ring. The restaurant's chatter dimmed as Lena stood frozen beside Manny's table. The gentle question, "Are you okay?" echoed in her mind like a whisper she wasn't allowed to hear. Her eyes darted nervously toward the man at the counter, the one with the commanding stare. He was older, bulky, wearing a grease-stained apron, the restaurant manager, as Manny would soon realize. Manny noticed everything, the way Lena's hands trembled while she held the notepad, the redness near her wrist where someone had gripped her too tightly. Years in the ring had taught him how to read faces, how to sense fear hidden behind forced calm. The man at the counter walked over, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sir, is there a problem?" he asked, his tone polite but edged with warning. Manny looked up, his voice steady. "No problem," he said softly. "Just checking if your staff is treated well." The man's smile tightened. "Of course, sir. We take care of our people here," but Manny didn't look away. "That's good to hear," he said, his tone warm yet heavy with meaning. Lena stepped back, whispering, "I'll get your drink, sir." Her voice cracked as she hurried off toward the kitchen. The man's glare followed her every step. Around the room, a few diners began to notice the tension. Forks paused midair, phones subtly tilted, their cameras quietly rolling. Manny's presence drew attention anywhere he went. But this was different. People could feel something wasn't right. The manager leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Sir, I don't appreciate anyone questioning how I run my place." Manny's reply was calm, almost too calm. "And I don't appreciate seeing fear where there should be respect." The man's expression darkened. "You don't know the full story," Manny nodded. "Maybe not, but I can tell when someone's hurting." At that moment, Lena returned, eyes wet, holding the glass with shaking hands. Manny gently took it, his touch reassuring, and whispered, "You don't have to hide." A tear rolled down her cheek before she could stop it. The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Even the sound of the kitchen faded behind the weight of what was happening. The manager's face reddened. "Enough of this," he barked. "You're upsetting my staff," but Manny didn't flinch. He placed his drink down and looked up with quiet authority. Not the power of a boxer, but of a man who refused to ignore injustice. "Sometimes," he said softly, "people get upset when the truth comes out." Phones were now recording openly. The customers knew they were witnessing something real, something that wasn't just about a celebrity in a restaurant, but about courage and compassion. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly but didn't know whether to step in? Tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were sitting in that restaurant? There are moments when silence becomes a form of surrender, and Manny Pacquiao never learned how to surrender. The restaurant had grown so still you could almost hear hearts beating. Lena stood a few steps away, frozen in place, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. The man who claimed to be her manager towered near Manny's table, puffing out his chest in false confidence. "Sir," the man said again, louder this time. "You're disturbing my business. Please finish your meal and leave." Manny didn't move. His elbows rested calmly on the table, his fingers interlocked. His voice came out low, controlled, the kind of tone that made people listen. "I'm not disturbing your business," he said. "I'm asking about something more important, her safety." A murmur spread through the restaurant. A few diners nodded quietly. Others held their phones higher, capturing every second. The manager's jaw tightened. "You think you can come in here, eat my food, and tell me how to handle my staff because you're famous?" Manny shook his head slowly. "No, I'm saying no one has the right to hurt another person, famous or not." That single sentence hit the room like a thunderclap. Lena's trembling hands gripped the tray so tightly her knuckles turned white. Tears welled up again, this time refusing to be held back. "Please, sir," she whispered toward the manager. "Don't make a scene." "Quiet," he snapped, his hand jerking toward her. Not to hit, but to silence. But that tiny movement was enough to ignite Manny's fury. He stood. Calm, steady, but unmistakably powerful. Though shorter than the manager, his presence filled the space like a storm about to break. "Don't raise your hand to her," Manny said quietly. "Not now. Not ever." The crowd gasped. Chairs scraped as people shifted closer, unwilling to look away. Someone whispered, "He's really standing up for her." Another muttered, "That guy's done for." The manager's arrogance faltered. He stepped back slightly, looking around at the eyes staring him down. Still, pride pushed him forward. "You don't understand, Pacquiao." "I understand enough," Manny interrupted. His tone wasn't angry, just unshakable. "I've been poor. I've been desperate. But I've never believed that power gives anyone the right to hurt the weak." Those words sank into everyone present. Even the air seemed to pause. Lena began to cry softly, covering her mouth with trembling fingers. Manny gently turned toward her and said, "You're safe now. No one will touch you while I'm here." The crowd started clapping, and soft at first, then louder. The sound grew, filling the restaurant with something powerful: solidarity. The manager's face turned red with embarrassment. "Enough!" he shouted. "Everyone stop recording." You don't know what's happening here. But they did know. They saw enough. Manny's voice rose, calm but commanding. "You should treat every person with dignity, whether they're your worker or a world champion. The only thing separating us is how we use our strength." The manager looked as if he wanted to argue, but his voice died in his throat. Lena wiped her tears, standing a little straighter now, fragile but no longer invisible. For a moment, the room was completely still again. The boxer and the bully stood face to face, not in a ring, but in a place where real courage meant defending someone who couldn't fight back. Finally, Manny said, "You can keep your food. I've already been served enough truth today." He reached for his wallet, placed a few bills on the table, and turned toward the door, but not before looking back at Lena. "Don't lose hope," he said softly. "You deserve better." As he walked out, people rose to their feet in quiet respect. Some followed him outside, hoping to thank him. Others stayed behind, glaring at the man who had just been stripped of all his false power. Courage is contagious. When one person stands up, others find their voice. As the door swung shut behind Manny, the energy inside the restaurant began to shift. People murmured quietly, exchanging glances filled with both admiration and disbelief. Some followed him outside, cameras still rolling. But many stayed, their attention now fixed on Lena and the man who had just been exposed. The manager stood near the counter, face flushed, hands shaking. He barked orders at no one in particular, but the staff ignored him. The illusion of control had shattered. Lena stood motionless for a moment, the tears on her cheeks drying into faint salt trails. Then with a deep, trembling breath, she turned toward him. "Why?" she whispered, barely audible but powerful enough that every person nearby fell silent again. The man glared, his voice cracking. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Go back to work," but she didn't move. She looked around at the customers, then back at him. "I can't keep lying," she said. "Not anymore." A middle-aged woman from another table called out softly, "It's okay, dear. Tell the truth. Encouraged by the crowd's quiet support, Lena spoke, her words halting at first, then stronger with every sentence. He's been hurting me, she said, her voice shaking. Not just shouting, more than that. For months. A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. The manager's face went pale. She's lying, he snapped. She's trying to ruin me. But no one believed him anymore. Too many people had seen the bruises, the fear, the trembling hands. The truth was finally visible. Lena wiped her tears and continued. I needed this job. I have no family here. I couldn't leave. But when that man... She gestured toward the door where Manny had gone. When he looked at me and asked if I was okay, I realized someone finally saw me. The crowd clapped softly again. A few people stepped closer to her, offering tissues, comforting words. A man from the corner table said, We recorded everything. We'll make sure you're protected. The manager's anger turned into panic. He tried to snatch a customer's phone, but two men stepped between them. Don't even try, one said coldly. Lena's knees trembled, but she stood tall. I'm not scared anymore, she whispered. Not after today. Outside, Manny stood near his car, surrounded by a few bystanders thanking him. He wasn't smiling, just quiet, thoughtful. One of them said, Sir, you didn't have to do that. He replied softly, If we only act when it's easy, what kind of people would we be? Just then, a young man from the restaurant ran out. Sir, she's speaking up inside. People are recording it. Manny turned back toward the door, eyes shining with quiet pride. Good, he said. That's her victory, not mine. Inside, the police were being called. A few officers soon arrived, separating Lena from the manager. The entire restaurant had transformed into a scene of justice unfolding in real time. One of the customers played the recording for the officers, clear audio of the argument. Manny's calm voice, the manager's aggression, and Lena's confession. The lead officer nodded grimly. We'll handle this, he said. Lena watched as the manager was questioned, his excuses crumbling. When it was over, she sat down at a corner table, overwhelmed but free. A few minutes later, Manny quietly walked back in. The room went silent again, but this time it was a silence of respect. He didn't say anything at first, just walked up to her, placed a gentle hand on the table, and said, You were brave. That's what real strength looks like. Lena's eyes filled again, but this time the tears were of relief. Thank you, she whispered. You gave me courage. Manny shook his head. You already had it, he said with a small smile. You just needed someone to remind you. Sometimes, standing up for someone else means standing up for what's right in all of us. The police had already taken the manager aside, questioning him near the counter. The entire restaurant was still tense, but the air felt lighter, like a storm had finally passed. The cameras were still rolling, not out of curiosity anymore, but respect. Manny Pacquiao stood beside Lena's table, quiet but firm. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, people listened. He had fought wars inside the ring, but this was something deeper. Lena looked up at him, her face pale but peaceful. I was so scared, she whispered. He said no one would believe me, that no one cared. Manny nodded slowly. That's what people like him do, and they make you believe you're small. But you're not. You're strong because you survived. The officer approached Manny politely. Sir, thank you for intervening. We saw the videos, and it's clear you handled this calmly. We'll take it from here. Manny looked around at the customers. Thank you for staying, he said to them. It takes courage to witness something like this and not walk away. A woman near the door replied, We stayed because you did. Those words hung in the air, simple, but powerful. Manny turned back to Lena. What will you do now? She hesitated. I don't know. I have nowhere to go. Manny thought for a moment. He didn't offer pity, and he offered purpose. There's a foundation I work with, he said softly. They help women who've been through abuse. If you want, I can connect you. You deserve a new start. Her lips trembled as she nodded. Thank you, sir. I never thought a stranger would care. Manny smiled faintly. We're only strangers until we decide to care. The officer came back saying the manager would be taken in for questioning. The crowd applauded softly, relief washing over the room. The nightmare was ending, but the message was just beginning. Manny turned toward everyone. The cameras focused, knowing what he was about to say would echo far beyond the restaurant walls. He spoke slowly, his voice calm. but filled with conviction. You know, people think strength is about fighting in a ring or winning titles, but true strength, the kind that matters, is standing up when it's not easy. It's choosing respect over fear, kindness over silence. The crowd listened in absolute stillness. Even the hum of the ceiling fan seemed to pause. We see people every day who are hurting. Waitresses, drivers, helpers, neighbors. And we look away because it's not our problem. But the truth is, every act of injustice is everyone's problem. A few people nodded, some even teared up. The sincerity in his voice reached beyond words. Manny looked at Lena again, his eyes gentle. You didn't deserve what happened to you, but today you showed more courage than most ever will. Lena smiled weakly through her tears. You gave me hope again. He shook his head. No, he said. You found it in yourself. I just reminded you it was still there. As the officers escorted the manager out, a few people clapped, not out of celebration, but respect. Lena stood trembling slightly, and for the first time in months smiled without fear. Manny reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and quietly paid for his meal. For the restaurant, he said, handing it to another staff member. May the next chapter here start with kindness. Then he turned toward the door, his silhouette framed in the warm afternoon light. As he walked out, someone shouted, You're a true champion, Manny. He paused, looked back, and said with a humble smile, Champions aren't made in the ring. They're made in moments like this when we choose respect. The restaurant erupted in applause. Phones captured the moment. But what people remembered most wasn't the celebrity in the room. It was the message he left behind. Fame can open doors, but character opens hearts. Outside the restaurant, a small crowd had gathered. Word spread fast. Manny Pacquiao had just stood up for a waitress who was being abused. People from nearby shops peeked out, curious and amazed. The street buzzed with quiet excitement, phones raised. Cameras flashing, but Manny remained calm, humble, and unbothered by the attention. He was speaking softly with the officers when another patrol car pulled up. From it stepped Officer Reyes, a younger cop with an alert expression. As he approached, his eyes widened in surprise. Sir Manny Pacquiao, he said, almost disbelieving. You're the Manny Pacquiao! Manny gave a modest smile. Just Manny, he said. We had a situation inside. She needed help. Reyes nodded, turning serious. Yes, sir. We already received multiple reports from witnesses and video footage. His gaze shifted toward the restaurant door, where the manager stood, handcuffed and pale, being led out by another officer. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and shouts of support. Justice for Lena, someone yelled. God bless you, Manny, cried another. Inside, Lena stood near the counter, trembling, but this time it was relief, not fear. A few staff members surrounded her, reassuring her that she wasn't alone anymore. When Manny stepped back in to check on her, the whole restaurant seemed to hold its breath again. The officer who had recognized him followed. Sir, the first officer said awkwardly, I didn't realize who you were before. Manny shook his head kindly. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is what happened here. If I were just another man, it should still be wrong. The officer's posture softened. You're right, sir. We'll make sure she gets proper protection and that this case is handled fairly. Manny nodded, then turned toward Lena. You see, he said gently, when you speak up, the world starts to listen. Her eyes filled with tears again. I didn't think anyone would believe me. They will now, Manny said, because truth always finds its way to the light. The crowd outside cheered as the manager was taken into the patrol car. The bystanders clapped, not out of excitement but out of shared humanity. Manny stepped outside once more, facing the crowd. Cameras pointed at him, but his words weren't for the media. They were for everyone watching, both there and online. Don't wait for someone famous to speak up before you do what's right, he said. Each of us can make a difference, no matter where we come from or how much we have. Respect is not earned by power. It's earned by kindness. The people applauded, their phones still rolling, a moment that was already going viral across social media. One young man shouted, Sir, that man should lose his job after what he did. Manny looked thoughtful for a second. Maybe, he said, but what he really needs to lose is his pride and find his humanity again. The line hit deep. Even the officers paused, reflecting on the truth behind it. Lena came to the door, smiling shyly, and waved to Manny. He waved back, then placed a hand over his heart before walking toward his car. The crowd clapped again, not for the champion boxer, but for the man who had reminded them what real strength looked like. Some fights are won not with fists, but with heart. By the next morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Videos from the restaurant flooded every social media platform. Clips of Manny Pacquiao standing calmly, defending a trembling waitress, his words echoing across millions of screens. No one has the right to hurt another person. That line became the heartbeat of every post. Every headline, every share, news outlets around the world covered it. The story wasn't about boxing titles or fame. It was about compassion, courage, and the kind of strength that inspires others to do good. Lena's name trended online as people offered support and donations to help her rebuild her life. Messages poured in from strangers saying, "You're not alone anymore." Meanwhile, the restaurant's management faced an official investigation. The abusive manager was suspended, his actions condemned by both the public and his peers. Justice had begun its course, and all because one man refused to look away. But Manny Pacquiao didn't post any statement or take credit. Instead, later that day, he shared a simple message on his official page, a single photo of him shaking Lena's hand, both smiling through the weight of everything they'd overcome. Beneath it, his caption read, "You don't need to be a champion to stand up for someone. You just need a heart that refuses to stay silent. No one should be judged, ignored, or mistreated. Always choose respect." The post exploded with love and gratitude. People across the world typed the same word in the comments: respect. From Manila to New York, from small villages to big cities, his message touched millions. Back at the restaurant, Lena began a new job under new management. Every day she wore the same gentle smile, but now it was real. And as for Manny, he moved on quietly as he always did, leaving behind not just a viral story, but a reminder of what true greatness really means, because legends aren't defined by victories in the ring. They're defined by the moments when they fight for what's right outside it. If you believe in kindness, dignity, and equality for all, type respect in the comments. Let's make compassion go viral.